On July 4, 1827, New York's free black population gathered in their churches to celebrate what they called Emancipation Day, the moment when New York would finally end slavery. William Hamilton, trustee of African Zion Church, stood up and declared, "No more shall the accursed name of slave be attached to us. No more shall Negro and slave be synonymous." The dawn of freedom had arrived. But the dawn was an illusion. Reverend Peter Williams Jr., one of the most important black leaders in New York, warned the community with wisdom. The color line prevented black people from riding street stages. They couldn't sit on the Broadway omnibus. Churches allowed them in, but only in the gallery, separated from white worshipers. Even black barbers with white customers couldn't cut black men's hair. According to Williams's warnings, documented in historical records, civic and political participation for African Americans was still a mirage. In May of 1834, two silk merchants and abolitionists named Arthur and Lewis Tappan did something radical. They created the Female Anti-Slavery Society, putting women at the front lines of the abolitionist movement. It enraged the racists in the city. Then Arthur Tappan invited Samuel Cornish, a black Presbyterian minister, to sit with him in his pew at Late Street Church. According to blackpast.org, this caused a complete furor among other congregants. The pastor, Reverend Samuel Cox, responded with courage. He said Jesus himself would have been of Syrian hue, similar in complexion to African Americans. But his defense didn't matter. The anger was already burning. White, working-class mobs began to form, and they had targets. Beginning on July 7, 1834, according to historical records, New York City exploded into riots that would last nearly a week. At times, mobs controlled entire sections of the city. The first targets weren't black people. The first targets were the white abolitionists themselves. Samuel Cox's Late Street Church was attacked. Windows shattered. Mobs broke into his home on Charlton Street, smashing fencing and hurling paving stones at the residents. They surrounded Reverend Henry Ludlow's church on Spring Street, destroying the organ, ripping out the pews, tearing down the galleries. They used wood from the desecrated church to build a street barricade. But the violence didn't stop there. The riots reached their peak of terror in the 5 Points, the slum shared by African Americans and Irish immigrants. The mob put out a chilling message. According to historical documentation, place a candle in your window to escape reprisal. Homes without a candle were demolished. Property destruction. Terror. Organized racial violence by working-class white mobs. Then they came for the black churches themselves. St. Philip's African Episcopal Church, led by Reverend Peter Williams Jr., was targeted by rumors, false claims that Williams had performed an interracial marriage. According to historical records, the mob utterly demolished the church. The organ was destroyed. The pews were torn out and set ablaze in the streets. One group of rioters reportedly carried a hogshead of black ink with which to dunk white abolitionists. The violence was calculated. It was deliberate. It was racial terror aimed at crushing the movement toward freedom. In the face of this chaos, New York's Mayor Cornelius Lawrence called out the 1st Division of the National Guard. Armed troops took strategic positions across the city. They came with ball cartridge, real bullets. The magistrates were prepared to fire on the mob if necessary. The soldiers hacked their way through barricades. They dispersed the mobs. By July 12, 1834, the riots had subsided. The streets were controlled. The violence had been stopped. But nothing had changed. The same racism remained. The same segregation persisted. The color line was still there, unbroken, unmoved. The abolitionists had tried. Black leaders like Peter Williams Jr. had warned. Churches had been desecrated. Homes had been destroyed. Mobs had terrorized the city. And yet, America would not move. It would take a civil war. It would take blood. It would take another generation's struggle to begin to undo what those mobs defended with violence in July 1834. The 1834 anti-abolitionist riots were not about stopping abolitionists. They were about defending slavery itself. They were about maintaining white supremacy at any cost, even the cost of burning churches and destroying homes. Comment below. This is the history they didn't teach you. What surprises you most about what actually happened in 1834? Share this with someone who needs to know that fighting for freedom has always cost lives and always drawn violence from those protecting the system of oppression. Subscribe to Ikamafuna History TV because we're uncovering the riots, the violence, the untold cost of resistance that built the America we know today.